Our story begins with our protagonist, Ryota, waking up to the voice of a girl speaking in front of him. He hears her saying, "I killed the slime that was here, so the thing that appeared must be just meat in human form." The moment Ryota hears this, he immediately gets up, shocking the girl. Ryota is surprised by the place he's in and tells her, "I'm a normal human, not just meat." She replies, "Normally, when I kill a slime, I get bean sprouts. How did you come out of the slime?" Ryota is extremely confused by her words and says, "What slime? What beans? I don't understand anything." The girl then walks over and kills another slime that was in the same spot. The slime disappears, leaving bean sprouts behind. She tells Ryota this is a level 1 slime. In the dungeons here, when you kill this slime, these sprouts appear. Ryota stares at her and says, "I don't understand anything, and I don't even know how I got here." The girl, whose name is Emily, explains to him that everything in this world is obtained by defeating monsters in the dungeons. Ryota asks, "Aren't we supposed to be in Japan? How did we get here?" But Emily has no idea what Japan even is. As they walk, another slime appears in front of them, and Emily kills it. Ryota asks, "Why do you only kill slimes?" Emily replies, "Slimes are the only monsters on the first level here. My level is too low, so I can't go up to higher levels." She then takes Ryota to show him the status board, which allows him to see his current strength level. When they arrive, Emily places her hands on a crystal ball and sees her strength levels. Ryota thinks to himself, "This feels like a video game." He asks her, "What's on the second page of this report?" Emily explains, "It's the extraction level, which determines how much I can gather from monsters after killing them. The higher your level, the more you can extract." She then tells him, "Go ahead, put your hand on the crystal and try it." Ryota tries it and finds that all his strength levels are weak, but his extraction ability is at rank S. Emily reacts in shock. "Wow, you're at rank S. That means you're extremely weak." Ryota is surprised and says, "From what I know, in games, rank S is higher than rank A." He then tells her, "I want to try something." He takes the hammer from her hand but can't hold it because it's too heavy. So Emily gives him a bamboo stick instead. Ryota then tries to kill a slime with it, and he succeeds, causing a huge amount of bean sprouts to appear. Emily exclaims, "I've been in this place for 2 whole years, and I've never seen an extraction this large. You managed to pull out a huge amount." Ryota thinks to himself, "That means my assumption was right. Rank S is actually higher than rank A." Just as he was about to continue speaking, his stomach growls from hunger. Emily offers to sit and eat together, and they do. She prepares the food for them, and Ryota finds it so delicious that he starts crying. He remembers his old life, where he would work all day in a company, come home late, eat anything available, and sleep. He had worked so much that he ended up in the hospital because of his miserable lifestyle. He recalls the moment he fell asleep at his desk and woke up in this world. Emily, standing next to him, reassures him, saying, "Don't worry, I'm sure you'll succeed in your life here. Hard work always pays off." After they finish eating, Ryota tells her, "I need to find a place to sleep." Emily replies, "There's a place near the dungeon where you can rent an apartment." Ryota asks, "Then why do you sleep in the dungeon?" She tells him, "The amount I can extract from the slimes is so little that it barely covers my food expenses. I dream of the day when I can afford to rent an apartment and live in it." She then gives Ryota the bamboo stick to keep as he leaves. The next morning, Ryota starts exploring the city and learns that the official currency is bilo. He begins to understand the prices of goods in the city and how people live. He then returns to the dungeon, fights level 1 slimes, collects the bean sprouts, and sells them. After saving up a decent amount of money, he rents a house and invites Emily to see it. When they enter, Ryota tells her, "I rented this house with the money I saved over the past 3 days." He takes out the key and hands it to her. Emily looks at him in confusion and asks, "Why are you giving me the key?" Ryota replies, "From now on, you'll be living here with me. Don't worry, I'll pay the rent. Consider it a gift for the meal you made for me on my first day." Ryota then heads to a shop in the city to sell the bean sprouts he had collected. While there, he speaks to the shopkeeper, Urza, and says, "Starting tomorrow, I'll try to explore the second level of the dungeon." Urza tells him the monsters on the second level drop carrots instead of sprouts, and they sell for a higher price. She then tells him, "Have you heard about the new dungeon that just appeared? The Neptune family is currently investigating the rewards that can be obtained there. They're the strongest family in the entire city." Ryota stops to think for a moment about what she just said, then quietly walks away. As soon as he returned home, Ryota found Emily cleaning the house, making everything shine. He sat at the table and asked her if she had heard about the new dungeon that had appeared. She told him that nothing could be obtained from defeating monsters there, so it was useless. The next day, Ryota went there himself. While exploring, he thought to himself, "In this world, everything is obtained from the dungeon. dungeons, so how come nothing comes out of this one? He started wandering through the dungeon, looking for monsters, and suddenly, a large skeleton appeared and attacked him. Ryota tried to defeat it, and when he looked, he saw that a seed had dropped. The moment he picked it up, he heard a voice saying that his health had increased by 1 point. When he later checked his strength with Emily, he saw that his health had indeed increased significantly. He thought to himself, that means the seed's effect was real. He continued defeating many skeletons to increase his health. However, when Emily killed a skeleton, nothing dropped from it. Even if she tried to take the seed that Ryota had obtained, she couldn't hold it. Ryota thought to himself, I think this dungeon is meant for people whose extraction level is ranked S. By the end of the day, Ryota returned home with Emily. While eating, he told her, tomorrow, I'll go to the main dungeon and move up to the 2nd level to see how strong I've become. I heard that the monsters there drop carrots when defeated, so we'll be able to make new meals. Emily replied, I just hope you don't act recklessly. Ever since you arrived, you've been incredibly reckless, staying out late every day. Try to come back as early as you can. Ryota promised her that he wouldn't stay out all day anymore. The next day, Ryota went to the 2nd level and started defeating the new slimes. He found that large carrots really did appear when he defeated the monsters. While standing there, he noticed a girl behind him. She said, are you a 1st level adventurer? I hate people at the 1st level. Then, she suddenly smacked his head with her hand, but nothing happened to him. She was shocked, turned her face away, and walked off. Ryota was confused by her behavior, but continued fighting monsters, collecting carrots, and selling them. When he returned home, he found Emily there. As they talked, he suddenly heard a knock on the door. When he opened it, he saw the same girl standing at the door. She tried to hit him on the head again, but once again, nothing happened to him. She tried to hit him again and again, but it was useless. Frustrated, she grabbed a random person from the street and struck him the same way. His head split open from the impact. She then stood there, saying to Ryota, I tried to injure you the same way, but nothing happened to you. And you're also at the 1st level, so how is this possible? Ryota was surprised by her reaction and thought to himself, maybe it's because my healing ability is ranked S. He then asked her, why did you even come here? She pulled out a carrot and said, I took this from you when you were in the dungeon, and I want more of it. When she glanced at Emily and saw that they had a lot of carrots, she walked in and sat down to eat with them. Emily started preparing the food, and then the 3 of them sat down to eat. After finishing, the rabbit-like girl got up and left. The next day, Ryota went to the new dungeon called Nihonium and moved up to the 2nd level. As he walked, a monster appeared and attacked him, breaking his weapon. Ryota fought back with his fists until he defeated it. He picked up the seed that had dropped and thought to himself, the 1st level here increased my healing ability, so what will the 2nd level do? The moment he held the seed, it disappeared, and a voice told him that his strength had increased. Just as he was about to turn around to look for more monsters, he saw the carrot girl standing in front of him. She told him, if you don't give me carrots right now, this will be your last day alive. Ryota responded, we won't find any carrots here, but when I go to the main dungeon today, I'll bring some for you. He asked her to wait for him at the shop where he sold his goods. By the end of the day, Ryota gathered the carrots and went to sell them. When he entered the shop, he found the girl already waiting for him, and everyone around was staring in surprise. As he approached her and handed her a carrot, the shopkeeper, Urza, asked, do you know this girl? Ryota replied, no, I don't. She just keeps asking me for carrots. Urza quickly responded, I'll buy all the carrots you brought today for double the price. She continued, her name is Eve. She's an adventurer with rabbit-like traits, and her destructive power is incredibly high. She doesn't like just any type of carrot, so if she likes yours, that means its value is much higher. She then bought his entire supply and gave him 15,000 bilo. Ryota thought to himself, if I make this amount every day for 30 days, I'll be the richest person in this entire place. He thanked Eve and told her, tomorrow, I'll bring more carrots for you. Then he left. The next day, Ryota and Emily went to the dungeon and gathered as many carrots as they could. As Ryota was searching for monsters to fight, he saw 2 people wielding weapons, struggling to defeat their enemies. They looked completely exhausted. Just as he was about to help them, another man approached them. He stood in front of them and said, why are you both so weak? You should be much stronger than this. They replied, we're completely exhausted. We haven't slept in 2 days. The man looked irritated and said, when I was at your level, I stayed in this dungeon for weeks without rest. That's why I became strong. I'm being harsh on you because I believe believe you're capable of much more than this." He then turned and walked away, and the two followed him. Ryota stood there, confused. "This reminds me of when I used to work at a company. My manager had the exact same mindset. He would give us impossible tasks and claim it was for our own good." His thoughts were interrupted when Emily called out to him, saying she had prepared the food. As they sat down to eat, before anyone could take a bite, Eve suddenly appeared at full speed and sat with them to eat. While they were all eating, the leader Ryota had seen earlier passed by with his followers. Ryota overheard him telling them, "Don't ever become like these people. Laziness in the dungeon is completely unacceptable. You need high morale to find greater rewards." Then they all walked away. By the end of the day, Ryota and Emily went to sell the carrots they had collected. When Urza saw them, she was shocked by the huge quantity. Ryota told her, "I actually collected even more, but this was all I could carry." She replied, "Then why don't you buy a magic cart? It will help you carry more loot." Taking her advice, Ryota and Emily left the shop and went to a store that sold magic carts. As soon as they entered, an elderly man greeted them and said, "I have a brand new cart that I just built recently. It even has a monster detection system. Costs 10 million. He continued, "Or, if you want a regular cart, that'll be 2 million. Ryota was shocked by the price and walked out of the store. As they were walking, they suddenly saw a crowd running in panic. Ryota heard people shouting, "A stray monster!" He turned to Emily and asked, "What's that?" She explained, "When a monster is killed and its loot isn't collected, it eventually turns into a monster itself. If that loot leaves the dungeon, it transforms into a monster in the streets among the people." She added, "Unfortunately, these monsters don't drop any loot, which is why people run from them and avoid fighting them." Ryota looked ahead and saw a huge gorilla with people running in all directions. He spotted Urza among the crowd, but she tripped and fell in front of the gorilla just as it was about to attack her. Ryota rushed forward and blocked the attack. At that moment, Eve and 3 other people jumped in to assist him, trying to take the gorilla down. Ryota and Emily joined them in the fight. Ryota leaped with all his strength and struck the gorilla in the stomach, managing to defeat it. The people around him started thanking him. Just as Ryota was about to leave, he heard the sound of loot dropping. He followed the sound to confirm what had fallen. When he reached the spot where the gorilla had been defeated, he saw a gun lying on the ground. Ryota picked up the gun, completely shocked. He thought to himself, "This weapon shouldn't exist in this world. And how did something drop from a monster that wasn't supposed to have any loot?" After that, Ryota went to the crystal to measure his strength. He was still at the first level, but all his abilities had increased significantly. He then entered Nihonium Dungeon on the 2nd level and started testing the gun on monsters. He managed to defeat a huge number of them. As he stood there, he thought to himself, "This gun is extremely useful, but how will I get more bullets? Until I figure that out, I need to conserve the ones I have." After that, he went to the main dungeon with Emily to hunt some monsters and collect more products. While they were sitting together to eat, Emily said, "That weapon of yours is really powerful." Ryota replied, "Thanks to it, I managed to raise my strength to rank B, and now I can move up to the 3rd level in the dungeon." After finishing their meal, they both went up to the 3rd level. The moment they arrived, Emily said, "This is my first time here. I know the monsters in this place are cockroaches, and you can get pumpkins from them, but I've never actually seen them before." As they walked, they spotted some cockroaches nearby. Just as Ryota was about to turn around to attack them, he looked beside him and saw Emily gripping her hammer tightly. She crushed them instantly. Ryota noticed that her expression had changed into something strange, and an immense energy was radiating from her. She suddenly started running after the cockroaches, wiping them out completely. They continued moving through the area, looking for more monsters. As they walked, Ryota thought to himself, "I've never seen Emily act like this before. I need to get out of here quickly before she transforms into that terrifying state again." They soon encountered more cockroaches. Just as Emily was about to enter her terrifying mode again, Ryota quickly took them out with his gun. They managed to gather a huge amount of pumpkins and took them to the shop to sell. As they were about to collect more pumpkins, they suddenly noticed that they had turned back into cockroaches. Ryota quickly killed them before Emily could transform again. He kept shooting until he had defeated them all. However, by the end of the fight, he had run out of bullets. Just as he was catching his breath after the battle, he looked beside him and saw that all the cockroaches had turned into bullets since they were outside the dungeon. Later that night, Ryota thought about everything that had happened. "If I can bring monsters outside the dungeon, I could obtain a lot of useful things from them," he thought. He decided to test his theory by taking a carrot and leaving it until it transformed into a monster. When the monster appeared, Ryota shot it with his gun and managed to defeat it. A large number of bullets dropped from it. He immediately picked them up and then wondered, "What if I do the same thing in Nihonium Dungeon. He went there and tried to keep the seeds that dropped from monsters, but every time he touched a seed, it disappeared, even though he had already maxed out his strength. After losing interest, he decided to leave. As he was moving toward the exit, a monster suddenly attacked him. Ryota struck it to push it back and threw it outside the dungeon. However, before the monster could hit the ground, it vanished completely. Later, he went to the city shop to sell his products. When he asked Urza about it, she explained, monsters from the dungeon completely disappear once they leave it. They also vanish if they move from one floor to another. Before she could finish her sentence, Ryota had already left, heading back to the dungeon. He stood in front of the entrance, and as soon as a monster attacked him, he grabbed it and threw it outside. Before the monster could hit the ground, Ryota shot it with his gun. A frozen bullet appeared in front of him. Ryota picked it up and loaded it into his gun to test it. When he fired at a tree, it instantly froze solid. Ryota was amazed by the bullet and thought to himself, I could make huge profits from this and defeat many powerful monsters with this bullet. And this is just from the second level. What would happen if I did the same thing on higher levels? He then returned to the main dungeon to collect some products to sell. While he was there, he loaded the ice bullet and shot a slime, freezing it completely. Emily then smashed it with her hammer, killing it effortlessly. Ryota told her, this bullet has so many possible uses, but unfortunately, it's difficult to obtain. I'll stick to using regular bullets until I figure out a way to get more of these. At the end of the day, Ryota and Emily were walking back home. On their way, they saw two people arguing in the street. Looking down, they noticed a cart filled with monster loot. The girl standing there was trying to burn all the loot before it could turn into a monster. But the merchant with her wanted to keep it as it was until he could sell it since it contained very rare loot. As they argued and Ryota and Emily watched, everyone suddenly saw that the merchant had become surrounded by a fog-like monster. The girl quickly said, that's the monster that appeared from the loot. It has no physical body and can control the body of anyone nearby. Ryota immediately pulled out his gun and shot it, managing to return the old man to normal. Beside him, the girl started rushing down toward the cart to destroy the monster before it could escape. She turned to them and said, both of you, get out of here quickly. Since I was working with him, I have to take responsibility for what happens here. The moment Ryota heard those words, he remembered his past life, back when he worked at a company, and the exact same scenario would always play out. Before the girl could jump down the cliff, Ryota stopped her. He pulled out his gun, loaded the ice bullets, and shot the monster below, freezing it solid. Emily then leaped onto it with her hammer and finished it off. Afterward, Emily checked her strength level and saw that it had increased significantly because she was the one who had landed the final blow on the monsters that Ryota had frozen. The next day, the two of them went to the main dungeon and moved up to the second level. A rare monster appeared, and Ryota managed to defeat it and take the necklace that dropped. He handed it to Emily and told her, this necklace can double the amount of loot. Let's test it now. Emily tried defeating some monsters, and the amount of loot they dropped doubled. After finishing, they returned home. While sitting there, Ryota thought to himself, this house feels really small now. He then asked Emily, what do you think about buying a new house? We'll try to save up some extra money and find a new place. Emily told him, I don't want you to push yourself too hard. Ryota reassured her, don't worry, I won't stay too long in the dungeons. He then went to the shop to sell some bamboo he had collected from the fourth level of the dungeon. As soon as he arrived at the shop, he placed the bamboo in front of Urza. Before he could learn its price, a girl behind him said, I want to take one of those bamboo sticks. Ryota responded, no problem. The girl took a stick, cut it, and ate it. She seemed to really enjoy it and immediately bought all the bamboo Ryota had. She gave him the money and left. The moment she walked out, Ryota turned to Urza, who told him, that girl is named Eric, and she's known as the gourmet. Any food she likes sells at an extremely high price. She then said, I want you to sign an exclusive contract with us because this bamboo is going to be the talk of the city. We want you to sell all of it to us from now on. Ryota agreed to her offer. He then headed to Nihonium Dungeon. While there, he noticed a girl standing with a group of people hunting monsters. Ryota stood there, puzzled, until a man approached him and said, that girl is the princess of this city. Right now, she's hunting monsters and they drop air, which we collect and sell to people in the city. Ryota thought to himself, they're literally selling air. The man added, it's one of our most popular products, all thanks to the princess. Ryota also noticed that they had a magic cart with them, which reminded him that he had wanted to buy one as well. When he returned home, he discussed it with Emily. He told her, we can either buy a new cart or get a new house. Emily replied, let's buy a magic cart first to help us carry more products. After that, we can save up again for a new house. The two of them then went to the cart shop. As soon as they arrived at the entrance, they heard crying from inside. When they entered, they found the shop owner's daughter standing there, crying. She told them, "My father left home 2 days ago and still hasn't returned. He told me he was going to collect some flowers." Ryota decided to go find out why he was delayed. Emily informed him that there was only one dungeon in the city that contained flowers, Arsenic Dungeon. The two of them immediately headed there. When they arrived, they saw many monsters standing around the path, completely motionless. Emily explained, "These monsters remain in place and don't attack anyone." They ran past them, but soon, the path was blocked by more monsters. Ryota pulled out his gun, but the bullets bounced off due to the monster's armor. Emily, however, grabbed her weapon and managed to defeat all of them. The monsters then transformed into flowers. They quickly rushed inside and found the cart shop owner lying on the ground. The two of them tried to wake him up. Emily, clearly frustrated, scolded him. "You were just lying here sleeping while your daughter was crying alone in the shop?" Ryota then asked him, "Why did you come here?" The man replied, "I was here because I was building a new cart. I needed a stone that was both heavy and light to finish making it." He continued, "I managed to get the heavy stone, but I still haven't found the light one. When I tried to leave, the monsters blocked my way." Looking above them, he pointed and said, "That stone up there is supposed to be lighter than ordinary air, which is why it floats. It's an extremely rare type of monster." Ryota and Emily decided to help him. Ryota lifted Emily up so she could defeat the monster. A blue flower dropped from it. The three of them left the dungeon and went to an empty area. They placed the flower on the ground, waiting for it to transform into a monster again. The shop owner explained, "I need the monster itself, so I'll try to catch it as soon as it appears. But the problem is that it's lighter than air, so it could float away quickly. We need to act fast." As soon as the flower transformed into a monster, the man rushed forward to grab it, but it slipped away from him. Ryota quickly pulled out his gun, loaded an ice bullet, and shot the monster, causing it to fall to the ground. The man grabbed it and used it to finish building the cart. He then decided to give it to Ryota as a gift. He told him, "I'm giving this to you because you helped me today. You also saved the city a few days ago, and you deserve this as a reward." Ryota took the cart and started using it in the dungeons. Emily told him, "Thanks to this cart, we were able to collect twice the amount of products." Ryota then took the cart to sell the products at the shop. When he arrived, he saw a man arguing with Urza about the price of his goods. Urza told him, "The price of your goods is 8,400. The man refused to accept the price. Just as he was about to raise his hand to hit her, his arms suddenly froze in place. He turned to see Ryota behind him, saying, "Urza wouldn't lie about the price she gives you." Ryota then placed all of the man's goods into his cart and said, "This cart has a feature that determines the exact price of any product." The displayed price was also 8,400, but the man was still upset and was about to strike Ryota. However, Ryota easily stopped his hand and slapped him away. The next day, Ryota and Emily went back to the dungeon to collect more products. By the end of the day, they had gathered 200,000. With that, they had completed the amount needed to buy a new house. At the end of the day, they started packing up all their belongings to leave. Ryota and Emily agreed to keep their current house as a backup location. Then they moved into their new apartment. And the next day, Ryota went to Demus Nihonium and started killing the monsters on the 3rd level. He thought to himself, at first it was skeletons, then zombies, and now the monsters have become myoma. I wonder what I'll face in the later levels. He noticed that in this level, his speed was increasing. By the end of the day, he went to the shop as usual, and while sitting there, he saw someone walking toward him with 2 girls, then sitting in front of him. Ryota asked, "Is there something you need?" The guy replied, "I want to challenge you to an arm wrestling match. I'm interested in your strength because I heard you put on a great show here yesterday." Ryota recalled when he hit that man and saw that the guy had already placed his hand on the table, so he extended his own hand, and they began the match. Both of them had almost equal strength and were shocked by each other's power. But in the end, Ryota managed to win. Everyone was surprised that Neptune lost. Ryota remembered Urza's words about that family and realized he was from the ruling family of the city. Neptune asked for a rematch, but Ryota refused. Just as they were about to get up, Neptune suddenly moved his hand and tried to hit Ryota hard, but Ryota blocked his attack and pushed him away. Neptune looked thrilled, stood up, and said, "You're really strong. How about joining our family?" Everyone around was amazed by the offer, but in the end, Ryota refused, took his leave, and went home to to tell Emily. He said, "I'm not interested in joining any group. I'm happy living here with you." Looking around, he saw Eve sitting on the table, eating carrots. He asked, "Did you follow me all the way here just for carrots?" Then he turned to Emily and found her saying, "I'm really proud of you. You're practically a hero in this city." After eating, he took off to Nihonium. Once inside, he found the princess and her group again, standing there killing monsters on the first level to sell the air released from them. As Ryota approached them, the old man greeted him and said, "Come check out the new boxes we made. They automatically absorb loot." He handed some to Ryota and added, "Tell your friends to come buy from us." As he was speaking, a brilliant idea struck Ryota, and he rushed off to put it into action. He ran quickly, trying to kill monsters, took the seeds that dropped from them, placed them inside the box, and managed to carry them out of Demas. Then he placed the box in front of him and waited for it to turn into a monster. A large number of skeletons appeared before him. Ryota grabbed his gun and started shooting them, gaining a large quantity of freezing bullets. Then he tested bringing out monsters from the second and third levels and killed them as well. Looking at his loot, he found new bullets, one with fire power and another with healing abilities. He kept gathering a large number of them. But while standing there, he felt something strange. Looking around, he saw Emily telling him, "That's why I came to you. A magical storm is about to hit this area. We have to get home immediately." Ryota hurried to the shop to sell everything he had. There, Urza asked, "Isn't Emily with you today?" He replied, "She went shopping for the house supplies." Urza said, "Must be because of the magical storm." Ryota asked, "What's the connection?" Urza explained, "A magical storm is a very rare phenomenon. During it, no one can use magic at all, inside or outside Demas. Today's storm seems really big, which is why all the magicians took the day off." While listening, Ryota noticed someone entering the shop, calling for help. "My sister is trapped in Demas silicon." Ryota was surprised. Urza explained that Demas is for magicians. She must have gotten caught in the storm and can't use magic. Leaving her stuck there alone, the boy started begging everyone in the shop for help, then collapsed in tears when no one cared, not even Neptune. Neptune then spoke with Ryota, saying, "The monsters in that Demas are really troublesome. Even I wouldn't go near it because they're barely affected by anything other than magic. I'm not risking my life there." Ryota stood there, deep in thought, remembering Emily's words, "You're a hero in this city." That was when he decided to go and rescue the girl. He rushed to Demas, reaching the third level. Along the way, he encountered some monsters, pulled out his gun, and used fire bullets. They worked, and he managed to take them down. He then used freezing bullets to stop the loot from transforming into new monsters. He kept fighting everything in his path. Meanwhile, Emily had gone to the shop looking for Ryota and learned he had gone to Demas Silicon. She decided to follow him. Ryota kept fighting monsters until he reached the girl, finding her on the verge of death. Suddenly, another monster charged at him. He reached for his gun to shoot, only to realize all his bullets were gone. At that moment, outside Demas, Emily and Eve were running toward him. While running, Emily asked Eve, "Why did you come with me?" Eve replied, "Just for the carrots. They taste good." Emily sighed, "That's definitely not why I'm running right now. Ryota reminds me of my mother." She recalled her memories with her mother, who used to fight monsters to save people, then comfort them and joke with them afterward. She was both kind and strong. One day, however, a dragon appeared in one of the Demas, and while everyone ran away, her mother went to fight it. She ultimately defeated the dragon but collapsed from exhaustion. Before she died, she kept asking if anyone was hurt, then asked Emily to carry her out of Demas to prevent her loot from turning into monsters. Her mother was undoubtedly a hero of the city. Ryota reminds me of her so much. He's helped so many people in this city. Now it's my turn to help him. Inside Demas, Ryota was running from the monsters, trying to shoot them with normal bullets, but they had no effect. While running, he suddenly saw Emily approaching with a horde of skeletons following her. They had brought him more bullets. Ryota realized they had gone to Demas and done exactly what he had been doing. The three of them fought off the monsters together, using the bullets they gathered to take down even more creatures. Finally, they managed to escape with the girl. Once outside, the girl was critically injured, and her brother couldn't use magic because of the storm. Ryota placed her on the ground, took out his gun, and shot her with a healing bullet. Her strength returned, and she woke up from her unconscious state. Her brother carried her and left the place. And the next day, Ryota went to the shop to sell the new loot he got from Demas Silicon, and this time he had watermelons. Just as Urza was about to take them, the girl from yesterday appeared again. She tasted the watermelon and liked it a lot. Before Ryota could process the situation, Urza told him, "We need to sign another contract for the watermelon." Ryota agreed to her request. Then Urza asked, "Do you have a license to enter the 5th level of Demas?" He asked in confusion, "What license?" Urza explained, "This license grants you permission to explore levels below the 6th. This is the system across the entire world. Since the danger of every Demas increases from the 5th level onward, each set of 5 levels requires a license. That means to explore levels 6 to 10, you need a new license, and another one if you want to go higher. Also, merchants are not allowed to buy loot from a hunter without the required license, so Ryota decided to go and get his license. He immediately headed there, taking Emily with him. Upon entering the place, he found a man sitting inside. Ryota walked up to him and said, "I want to get a license." The man responded, "What are your achievements?" Ryota remembered what Urza had told him about being questioned about his accomplishments. He replied, "I have been entering the 5th level and successfully defeating the monsters there." The man then stood up, took a large watermelon, and led Ryota into an arena-like area. He said, "This watermelon exists in the 6th level of the main Demas. It will transform into a monster now. If you can defeat it, you'll pass and receive your license." Indeed, the watermelon transformed into a new monster, a metallic slime. Ryota rushed at it and tried punching it, but it had no effect. He then took out his gun, loaded it with an ice bullet and a fire bullet, and shot the monster first with fire, then with ice. He struck the frozen block, shattering the slime and killing it. Turning to Emily, he explained that the extreme temperature difference caused the metal that made up the slime to melt. Looking back, he saw the examiner was astonished by his strength and handed him the license to enter the 6th level and beyond. The man said, "I've been working here for about 10 years, and I've never seen anyone with your strength. The future of this city is certainly bright." A few days later, Ryota went to an abandoned place, bought a tuna fish, and placed it there, waiting for it to transform into a monster. Eventually, the tuna turned into a giant gorilla, similar to the one he had killed before. Ryota took out his gun and used an ice bullet to paralyze it. He then rushed to its head and used normal bullets to finish it off. After that, he found that a gun had dropped for him. Now he had 2 guns, and he thought to himself, it will be much easier to switch between bullets now. After that, he went to the shop to sell some products as usual. However, when he arrived, he noticed a tense atmosphere in the place. He asked Urza about it, and she explained, "Some adventurers are on strike. The Adelbard family has taken control of the 6th level of Demas Silicon. That's the only place we can get rice from, so the price has skyrocketed recently." Ryota decided to go there and see the situation for himself. When he reached the entrance of Demas, he found a crowd of people gathered there. As he walked, he spotted Neptune standing among them. Neptune asked, "What are you doing here?" "You must be here because of the Adelbard family too." He continued, "I also came because of the people's complaints. This family has done this strike multiple times, and the patience of the townspeople has run out. I'm basically here to get rid of them." Ryota replied, "Wait, let me handle this. I'll solve the problem without killing them." Ryota then ascended to the 6th level and found a group of people blocking his path. Before they could say anything, he had already drawn both of his guns. The 3 of them immediately called for the rest of their family, and soon all of them stood in front of Ryota. Just as one of them was about to speak, Ryota fired 2 bullets at the same time. The shots merged, and all of them collapsed unconscious. Neptune, standing behind him, asked, "What did you just do?" Ryota replied, "I have healing bullets that can restore wounds. But I discovered that if I fire 2 of them at the same time, they merge into a sleeping bullet." Thinking to himself, he reflected, "I've been experimenting with all possible bullet combinations and have discovered a lot of new bullets that will be useful. For example, when ice and fire bullets merge, they turn into a completely erasing bullet." Then he turned to Neptune and asked him to help him get these people out of Demas. As soon as he left, Ryota found someone asking to meet him. He agreed and sat with him. The man introduced himself, "My name is Gray, and I am responsible for the main Demas." He then said, "I want to ask for your help in a battle over a new Demas against the neighboring city." He explained, "Our city's Demas produce vegetables, while the neighboring city's Demas produce all kinds of meat. However, the new Demas that appeared is located midway between our cities. Ownership of a Demas is usually determined by the loot it produces, but this one consists of 10 floors. Odd-numbered floors produce vegetables, while even-numbered ones produce meat. That's why we decided to determine ownership of the Demas by whoever can collect rare loot from it. Since you've become famous in this city, I want to rely on your strength. Even if we lose, you will still receive a reward. But if we win and claim the Demas, you will be exempt from all taxes in the city." Ryota agreed to the deal and prepared to leave. On his way home, he thought about what he needed to bring before leaving the city. He then told Emily about the situation and asked her to come with him to the new Demas. They set off on their journey. By the end of the day, exhausted from traveling, Ryota looked at Emily, who told him, "We'll camp here." She pulled a large tent from her bag and set it up. Ryota was shocked by all the things she had been carrying in her bag. The two of them sat down to eat. In the middle of their meal, Emily said, "I'm going to burn the trash we have because if we don't, it will spawn monsters. In the city, people burn it every day, but here, we're the only ones responsible for it." Before she could finish speaking, Ryota's mind started working. He took the trash bag and placed it outside, waiting for it to transform into a monster. It turned into a Frankenstein-like creature. Ryota stepped forward and used 2 fire bullets, burning it completely. He then went to check the loot and found that it was a homing bullet. The next morning, he woke up early to test it. He placed a carrot on the ground and waited for it to transform into a monster. When it did, he fired the bullet. It moved in every direction, relentlessly chasing the monster until it killed it. After that, Ryota and Emily headed toward the new Demas. The area was filled with merchants since it was tax-free, attracting people from both cities. As they walked, they noticed a large number of trash bags scattered in the streets. They saw a girl standing there, trying to burn all the garbage using her magic. When Ryota looked closely at her, he noticed dark circles under her eyes, and her face was extremely pale. He thought to himself, this means she hasn't slept for many days because of work. It reminded him of his old life when he worked at a company under similar conditions. He decided to go and help her. As he approached, she collapsed and lost consciousness. Ryota rushed quickly to catch her and asked, "Are you okay?" She replied, "Yes, I have to finish my work," then got up again to continue burning the trash. Ryota thought to himself, I've seen this situation many times before. People take on too many responsibilities until they collapse, and some even die from it. He took out his gun and fired 2 bullets at her simultaneously, which merged into a knockout bullet. He then had Emily take her to the tent. A while later, the girl woke up and stepped out of the tent. She looked around and saw trash bags scattered on the ground, all transforming into monsters. She saw Ryota shooting at them with his gun, collecting the bullets that dropped from them. They all went back inside the tent and sat down to eat. They learned that her name was Celeste, and she was responsible for burning the city's trash. However, the amount of trash in this area was enormous because many merchants and attackers had gathered here. Since the loot from Demas was tax-free until ownership was decided, this led to her exhaustion. As they were talking, they noticed that Celeste had fallen asleep from sheer fatigue. The next day, Celeste went out again to continue burning the trash, but she was much stronger than yesterday. She decided to stay with Emily and Ryota for the time being until the mission was complete. After that, Ryota took Emily, and the two of them went to the market in the area. There, Emily saw a ring she really liked, but it was priced at $1 million. Ryota decided he would save up to buy it for her. Then, he went to meet the person in charge of the city. When he entered, he found a man named Duke, who was responsible for overseeing this Demas. Ryota sat with him and reviewed all the maps of the area. He learned that his mission was to hunt down all the rare monsters. The hunters in Demas would search for them, and as soon as they found one, they would call him to kill it and collect its loot. Ryota rushed to the first level to see the first monster that had been found. There, he saw some people from the other city standing around. He drew his gun and tried to kill the monster. He successfully took it down and later received a large financial reward from Duke. He then went and bought the ring Emily had liked and returned to the tent, giving it to her as a gift for helping him. The next day, the two of them went to the crystal to measure their strength. Emily saw that next to all her stats, a +1 had appeared. Ryota explained, "That's because of the power of the ring on your hand." By the end of the day, Ryota went to meet Duke again and learned that the other city was planning to bring in more adventurers to quickly clear out all of Demas. They were going to flood the odd-numbered floors with adventurers who had an extraction ability of rank F to prevent them from obtaining any rare loot from the monsters in those floors. Ryota said, "I have a solution. If we can gather the rest of the rare loot from the odd-numbered floors, we can at least tie with them." He then asked Duke to raise the bounty for finding a rare monster to 10 million. "I have a 100% chance of obtaining rare loot. If I kill a monster and don't bring you anything, I'll personally pay the money back," he assured. And that's exactly what happened. Ryota started hunting down all the rare monsters in the odd-numbered floors of Demas and managed to collect all their rare loot. He cleared all 5 odd-numbered floors and then headed back to the tent, feeling proud of his accomplishment. But his moment of joy was short-lived. As he walked, he found a gang from the other city surrounding him. One of them used a spell on him to cancel all his strength, and they all tried to attack him. But Ryota pushed them back with his card apart and started striking them, knocking them all unconscious. He then took out his gun and shot them again with healing bullets. He stood there and told their leader, "I was able to use my gun at any time, even during the magical storm. So, I don't think a simple spell like this would stop me. I understand your feelings, but every time you try to attack me, I will still defend myself, because there are people waiting for me to return home. And I hope each of you finds that person in your life one day." Ryota then turned and made his way back to the tent. They all sat at the table to eat, and Emily had prepared a huge amount of food for them. The next day, Ryota woke up, and as soon as he stepped outside, he saw Celeste standing there, burning a small amount of trash. But then, she collapsed again. Ryota immediately took out his gun and shot a healing bullet at her. When she woke up, she saw Ryota asking, "Why did you use so much fire just to burn that small amount?" She replied, "Unfortunately, I can only use this spell. It's a level 3 fire spell. I can't use level 1 or 2 at all." While they were talking, more people arrived to drop off their trash. Just as Celeste was about to cast her spell, Ryota told her, "Don't worry, I'll help you." He pulled out his gun and shot a fire bullet at the trash. Then he said, "I've nearly finished my mission here. All that's left is for Demas to be officially assigned to the city, and then I'll head back. Until then, I'll help you as much as I can." But after some time, they saw an enormous pile of trash forming. Celeste told him, "That's because the Demas boss has appeared. These are monsters that show up every few months, but they're incredibly powerful. No one is allowed to enter Demas during that time." Ryota told Celeste to rest that day and took over all of her work. But the next day, the situation got even worse, and the amount of trash was far greater. Ryota decided to check with Duke about the issue and see if the team had managed to defeat the monster. When he arrived, he found Neptune sitting there and learned that he had been summoned to destroy the Demas boss. Ryota asked him to finish the matter quickly, but before he could finish speaking, Duke interrupted, saying, "It's not that simple. We made an agreement with the other city that whenever a Demas boss appears, both sides will summon a powerful fighter. We fulfilled our part, but they haven't done the same. They still haven't summoned anyone. If the Demas boss stays for too long, it could change the entire system inside, resetting all the loot back to how it was before. If that happens, we will have lost everything we worked for." Ryota responded, "I'll go there alone." Duke replied, "At the very least, you need 3 people with you." Ryota asked Neptune to join him, but he refused, saying he wouldn't risk his life. Ryota then went to the market to search for adventurers, but he had no luck. When he returned to the tent, he found Emily telling him, "I heard what happened. I'm ready to enter Demas with you." Then Celeste added, "I'll go with you too." And so, the 3 of them set off to enter Demas. Inside, the entire place was eerily quiet. The 3 of them searched for the Demas boss. Eventually, they spotted a massive horse with 2 horns. From its appearance, they immediately recognized it as the Demas boss. Emily tried attacking it, but a giant shield surrounded it, making it impossible to land a hit. The same thing happened when Ryota attempted to shoot it with his gun. The monster then charged at them. Celeste attempted to use her fire spell and managed to pin it down. Ryota then drew both of his guns and fired multiple rounds until he finally broke its shield. Emily moved in with her weapon and struck the monster. They repeated this process multiple times, pushing themselves to the limit. Despite their exhaustion, they eventually managed to destroy the monster and kill it. Ryota turned to Celeste and thanked her for her tremendous effort in helping them. He handed her the 2 horns, which were the loot dropped by the monster. She realized that these horns had a special power that would allow her to use level 1 magic without any restrictions. Ryota then reported everything that happened in Demas to Duke, who immediately rushed to check that the Demas system hadn't changed. The next day, the issue was completely resolved. Celeste could now use level 1 magic freely. Ryota learned that the Demas had officially been registered under his city, and they had successfully completed their mission. Ryota then offered Celeste the opportunity to come with them to the city and join their team. Emily and Celeste both agreed to the idea, and together they all headed back to the city. They all arrived back in the city and learned about something called the Harvest Festival. When Ryota asked Celeste about it, she explained that it was an annual festival held in the city. During the event, all the rare loot found in the Demas was gathered, allowed to transform into monsters, and then hunted down. The goal was to boost overall sales of monsters and loot. Ryota then rushed off to kill some of the monsters he had gathered from Demas Nihonium to collect more bullets. He managed to obtain a new type of bullet, a binding bullet. While they were talking, an explosion suddenly occurred in the city. Ryota and the others ran quickly to try and kill the monster. Ryota used the binding bullet to hold the monster down and successfully defeated it. A bag dropped from the monster as loot. Afterward, Ryota went to check on Emily, who told him she was fine, but her weapon had broken. They decided they would buy a new one. again. At the end of the day, while they were at home, someone came to see them. He introduced himself, saying, "I'm a weapons merchant. I heard that Emily's weapon broke, and I have an offer for you. I'll craft a new weapon for you for free." They agreed to his deal. The next day, Ryota went to the shop and met Urza. She told him, "I want to ask you for a favor. I need you to collect extremely rare loot that is very difficult to obtain." She handed him a book listing all the loot they had been unable to acquire. Then she gave him the payment for the goods he brought, but it was a very small amount. Ryota was surprised. Urza explained, "That's because the Demas that generates money has been accused of corruption by the officials." She continued talking, but Ryota wasn't paying much attention anymore. When he finished with her, he quickly ran to an empty area, took out a very expensive banknote, and placed it down, waiting for the monster that would appear from it. A giant eagle emerged. Ryota managed to defeat it and took the loot it dropped, which turned out to be an elixir that increased the plant extraction rate by 3 ranks. He thought to himself, "This loot is useless to me. My extraction rank is already S, and there's nothing higher than that." As he stood there, he suddenly saw the rabbit girl, Eve, running toward him, asking for carrots. They chatted for a while, and in the end, Eve asked to join his team. Ryota and the others gladly accepted her. Everyone gathered at their home again. The next day, Ryota woke up, and as soon as he got up to greet the others, he saw that Celeste was feeling very weak. Emily explained that there was a magical storm in the city and that during such storms, any magic user was severely affected. Ryota decided they should buy a new house with a storm barrier to prevent Celeste from suffering any further. They all found such a house, and despite its high price, Ryota purchased it for them. It became the official headquarters for their party. After settling into the house, they headed to the main Demas and ascended to the 7th level, which was covered in ice. There, Ryota saw the commander and the 2 people who had been with him before. He was deeply troubled by their condition, thinking, "Their minds have been completely brainwashed. I feel sorry for them." As he walked, a monster suddenly appeared before him. Ryota rushed forward and tried to attack it, but it had no effect. Celeste told him, "You won't be able to defeat the monster alone. This type of slime becomes invincible when it's about to die. That's why you need one person to weaken it and another to finish it off." Celeste then cast a fire spell on it, successfully killing it. They continued clearing all the monsters in the floor together until a rare monster suddenly appeared and attacked Ryota, landing a powerful hit. Eve rushed forward and struck the monster, and Ryota shot it with his gun, taking it down. The monster dropped a gem that reflected all attacks. Ryota took the gem and descended to a lower floor, where he found that every attack from the slimes was now being reflected back onto them, causing them to die on their own. He then went to sell the gem to Urza, as per their agreement. After that, Ryota headed to the 5th level of Demas Nihonium, where he encountered incredibly powerful monsters. He noticed that in this level, his magic points were increasing. He thought to himself, "What am I supposed to do with extra magic points? I can't even use magic." He brought up the issue with Celeste, and she bought him a rare plant worth 3 million. She explained, "If you eat this, you'll instantly learn 1 magic skill." But before eating it, Ryota had another idea. Yes, just as you guessed, he decided to leave the fruit until it transformed into a monster and then kill it to get an even better reward. And that's exactly what happened. The fruit transformed into a monster that mimicked the abilities and appearance of whoever it faced, replicating 80% of their strength. Ryota fought against the clone until he finally defeated it. The fruit dropped again, but this time, if he ate it, he would gain 2 magic skills instead of just 1. Ryota went to Demas to test out his new magical abilities. The first was a wind element skill. The second was a unique ability that increased the loot drop rate for another person. This meant that if Ryota used the skill on a monster and Emily landed the finishing blow, she would receive the same loot rate as Ryota, which was ranked S. As Ryota walked through the city, he saw Urza carrying heavy supplies and decided to help her. While standing outside the shop, he noticed a young girl nearby. She was asking people to let her join their teams, but no one accepted her, except for one person. That person was the commander Ryota had seen in the Demas before. Ryota was frustrated that the commander was about to recruit another member, so he stepped forward and said, "I'll take the girl into my team instead." As soon as he said that, the entire place started whispering about how lucky the girl was. Ryota was now considered the most important person in the city. The girl joined his party, and her name name was Alice. Ryota then took Alice to Demus Nihonium to test her abilities. He discovered that she had a special skill. She could communicate with monsters. She soon encountered a small skeleton-shaped monster that approached her. Alice decided to take it with her as a companion. The same thing happened later in the main Demus, where she met a tiny slime, and they became friends as well. Ryota then took Alice back home, and everyone in the group welcomed her as their newest member. The next day, Emily was cleaning the entire house while Ryota woke up. They learned that the harvest festival had begun, so they decided to go for a walk. As they strolled through the market, they found a man selling monster boxes. Ryota decided to buy a few of them. He placed one down to see what kind of monster would emerge. A rat appeared, and Ryota shot it with his gun, binding it. Then, he activated his magic skill and had Emily deliver the final blow. The monster dropped a new type of bullet, an enhancement bullet. Ryota picked it up and used it, then tested a regular bullet afterward. He found that its power had increased significantly. He collected a large amount of these bullets and then returned to the city. As they continued walking, they heard a distant noise. Ryota rushed toward it and found a monster there. He tried attacking it once, then twice, but each time he hit it, the monster grew larger. Neptune happened to be passing by at that moment, so they all gathered and attacked the monster together. Eventually, they managed to defeat it. They spent the rest of the day exploring the festival together. Ryota decided he would participate in the festival and asked Celeste to be his combat partner, as she had extensive knowledge about different monsters. The two of them went to the festival arena, where a monster appeared before them. They fought together and successfully defeated it. The crowd cheered for them, and they all returned home afterward. As they stood there, happy with how the day had gone, Alice suddenly felt something strange. She started moving involuntarily. Ryota rushed to wake her, and she explained that she had heard a monster calling to her from within Demus, asking her to come. Ryota told her, "Alright, we'll go check it out first thing in the morning. It's too late now." They all returned home, and Ryota went to meet with the head of Demus, who had requested to see him. There, he learned that no loot had been dropping from any Demus for the past 2 days. The head of Demus asked Ryota to investigate the matter himself, as he was one of the strongest people in the city. The next day, Ryota and his team headed to the main Demus. As they fought monsters, they noticed that none of them dropped any loot. Ryota started thinking about the situation. He immediately ran to Demus Nihonium. Upon reaching the 4th level, he encountered a strange humanoid monster. This creature was the Demus boss. Ryota pulled out his gun and tried to shoot it, but the monster's speed and strength were far beyond his own. Ryota tried to get up and attack again, but all his strikes were ineffective. He then fired several homing bullets at the monster, but they all passed right through it, except for one which managed to hit. That's when Ryota realized that the monster was made of mist and only solidified the part of its body it used to attack. He started firing multiple homing bullets at it, managing to disable its arm and leg. He then rushed forward and delivered the final shot with his gun, successfully killing it. At that moment, Emily arrived to check on Ryota. She was overjoyed when he opened his eyes and asked him not to push himself so hard on any mission again. Looking around, Ryota saw his entire team waiting for him. He left Demus feeling incredibly happy and decided from then on to help every member of his team grow stronger. Over time, they all became some of the most powerful people in the city, and their team was recognized as the strongest in the entire world. In the end, they all gathered at a party in Ryota's house, with all the city's residents attending. Everyone was delighted with how far they had come. Sitting alone for a moment, Ryota reflected on his past life. He felt truly happy that he had come to this world and had freed his old self from the suffering he once endured.